Life is an unpredictable and amazing journey. Our ever-changing conditions within today's society and the constant new trends influencing cultures can become overwhelming, to say the least. But no worries. The Network of Awareness podcast radio show brings peace of mind in these challenging times. Follow us on your favorite podcast listening app and join our community of Network of Awareness at networkofawareness.com.
We live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth, a network of courage, a network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, Aura the Informationalist.
Peace and greetings, people. This is Aura the Informationalist, and you're now tuned in to a live broadcast of the Network of Awareness. Let's go. We got a action-packed show for you today. I'm going to try to cover a lot of information today in regards to today's show. And the title for today's show, this is episode 31 of season 5 being Great Understandings. And season 5 is all about great understanding so that we can have a better understanding of how this world is a stage for deception and manipulation, spiritually, physically, mentally, and any other type of way that it can possibly be deceived is happening right now. We are in the days of revelations. So today's episode is being woke equals sleep paralysis. And I'm going to talk a lot about how the woke movement, which is not actually anything new, but how it's been revived into something new for a whole new type of manipulation in these modern day times where Satan has a stranglehold on society. But no worries, because all things are possible through the grace of the Most High. And that's why, brothers and sisters, we need to unify and stick together now more than ever, because the deception from the deceiving master, the master of deception, is very, very consistent. So we have to be consistent in bringing out the truth to quell the deception. And we're going to do that today. And I'm going to try to cover as much information as I possibly can in regards to how this wokeness, being woke movement has put people in a state of sleep paralysis. And it's really putting people in a in a place where it's just keeping the division gravy train going and going and going. So we're going to talk about that on today's episode. So let's get this episode started, shall we?
You are now tuned in to the Network of Awareness.
Please just tell me what's happening to me in plain English without the mumbo jumbo.
Welcome to this Most High Monday morning. I decided to do a live broadcast this morning. I started a little late, so my apologies, because I wanted to get some information early this morning. I wake up normally around 5 a.m., but today I woke up at 4:37. And people, I've been waking up between the hours of 3 and 5, charged up. And sometimes when I wake up, it's something where I think I'm just going to go start working out early in the morning like I used to do way back when, where I used to just go running very early in the morning. I think I'm going to start doing that because I have a lot of energy. But what I have been doing is just trying to work out these ideas that I have at such an early time of the day where my mind is fresh, my spirit is very, very much vibrant, and I have done, like what I have done sometimes is, and I've talked about this with Brother Julian, is sometimes I go right to the phone, which is not good. I have to stop doing that. Sometimes I go to read scriptures, and I need to get more into the process of one of the things I'm trying to work out into a regiment is when I wake up, read scriptures for 15 minutes to a half an hour, and then go work out. And easier said than done because I wind up, doing other things. And like today, I just started researching on the phone about, this woke movement, because even though I'm still going to do my 100 interviews for season 5, I am going to do some solo casting like I have done here and there in between interviews. But this particular week, something in my spirit said you need to start doing more solo casting for this week. So I'm only going to do one interview this week. And that interview I'm going to do with a brother named Hashiak. And for the rest of this week, besides that interview, I'm just going to be doing this, which is solo casting. And I have a lot of topics to cover, people. That's why when I originally thought about doing just 100 straight interviews, I'm like, how am I going to be able to do that when I got so much other stuff to talk about? So I got to go with the spirit, because that's one thing that I've decided to do this year is follow the spirit and do not question the Most High. See, I've been very stubborn throughout my life. I'm going to be 45 years old next week, and I've been stubborn because the Most High is always revealing things to me and letting me know that I have great purpose in this life, just like we all do. And I've been very ignorant and stubborn and very disrespectful to many times disregarding the messages that has been given to me to follow when it comes to following the spirit. And I just don't want to do that no more. So ever since this supposed Gregorian calendar New Year started, I said, I know, even though it's not the new year, but because we still have to write down 2023 on whatever we sign off on, whether it's a check or whether it's a statement, whatever it is, we still got to put that 23 on the paper, unfortunately. And I decided that I'm going to follow my spirit. I'm not going to question anything no more when the Most High is revealing things to me, especially in these days of revelations. There's no reason for me to question anything no more. And I've been good. Listen, especially when it comes to not engaging with certain energy, i.e. people. Once I know something's not good for me, I'm going to disengage. I'm still going to be nice. I'm still going to be kind. I'm still going to be charitable to a certain degree, but I am not going to be stupid, and I'm not going to be naive to the reality that's right in front of me. And that's just a suggestion for anybody listening to this show. I'd highly suggest that if I can impress anything upon you for this year and for this broadcast especially, is to see what's in front of you and understand it for what it is. Instead of going with the social norms or trying to please people, trying to please people so much that you want to help people, but don't help people to the point where you wind up compromising your spirit. And I've done that way too much, especially last year and the year before that. And I had to learn some hard lessons, because the reality is a lot of people are just not good. A lot of people, they want us, I'm going to say this, like they want to do right by you or by people, but they just don't know how, because there's all this trauma and there's this social conditioning since birth that they haven't reconditioned. And a lot of times, if you're not, and this is why it's so important, not just to read scriptures, but to really put yourself in a position where you're following through on your understandings. And that means that you have to do a very honest self-evaluation. And one of the things that I've come to know in my self-evaluation is that I have to stop ignoring the spirit when things are revealed to me. I have to stop ignoring that intuitive feeling, that intuitive knowing, to where it's like when something doesn't feel right, it's because it's not right. And trying to make it right, you're going to wind up getting into a bad, wrong situation, because something that was letting you know it's not right and you trying to make it right, it ain't going to ever work out for you. So that's my little public service announcement for this morning on this Most High Monday on January 8th. It's now approximately 7:44 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So anybody that is listening to this live broadcast, shout outs to all the people that do listen live. I'm happy that you do get to tune in. And of course, for those that make the comments in the chat room, I appreciate it, but I'd rather that you just leave your reviews after each episode. If you can leave your reviews on Apple or Spotify or Podchaser, or even on my website, just always leave a review. And I've been telling people, the people that say that they love the show, they think the show is great, help the show increase in ranking, because I take this very seriously. So and it's free to help me out. It's not going to cost you anything to leave a review, because by leaving a review for each and every episode, so it's another call to action, is that leave a review for every single episode you listen to. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It doesn't have to be anything long. It could be like good show, or, just your thoughts in a sentence, or you don't have to write a paragraph. But what that does, brothers and sisters, is that not only when you like the show, because liking the show, believe it or not, just like how people say, hey, like and subscribe on YouTube, that goes a long way. Well, it goes a long way when you like and leave a review on a podcast, especially when you download it. All that trifecta really helps the podcast network or the podcaster grow in rankings. It brings it more notoriety. It makes it more known to other people that may not know it, because it increases in rank and it gets more attention. Just like network of awareness and the search engine optimization is pretty high. It's been like that for a long time. But because I get shadow banned, this is the only way to combat that. That's the only way, because even though I may not get credited for the downloads from all the places around the world, at least they cannot shadow ban a review. They can't shadow ban a like. They just can't. But they can shadow ban downloads in the algorithms, but they can't shadow ban the reviews. And that does get calculated from month to month on the major networks for podcasting, like a Spotify, like a Apple, iHeartRadio. So definitely do that. Shout outs to all my TikTokers. Shout outs to all the people that follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. And of course, to all my network of Awarians. Now, there's a lot to cover, so I'm not going to be able to cover everything in regards to the topic of discussion for today, because being woke equals sleep paralysis. It goes very deep, but we're going to try to cover as much as we can in a short period of time. So with that being said, I want to say this, is that being woke is something old, and it's turned into something new, but it's just another form of manipulation. And I'm going to read a couple of articles in regards to this. And I'm also going to talk about where it actually came from. And one thing I've realized, and it reminds me of my stepfather who's passed away. My stepfather drank himself to death. And my stepfather, he suffered a lot from post-traumatic war syndrome. My stepfather was in Vietnam, and I guess that he dealt with a lot of things in Vietnam that just was debilitating to him mentally. But when you're not feeding yourself spiritually and you turn to other vices, that deterioration can be even worse than somebody that's actually feeding themselves some righteous fruit. And my step-pops was a smart man. I'm not going to say he was a good man. He did good things, but he was very very manipulative, could be very selfish at times, but he did give me a lot of gems. He did provide for me a lot of knowledge, and I bring him up because when I was younger, I remember him telling me about the whole homeboy concept and how the homeboy concept came to be. Because, when I was growing up, I was like, yo, that's my homeboy. Yo, that's my homegirl. And people still, believe it or not, even in this day and age, even the younger generations, Even people that are in their 30s and 20s are still using those terms. And it's interesting because I found out that that term homeboy um, really took, I guess was one of those situations where I don't know if it was actually created at this time, but according to what my step pops had told me way back when, is that term homeboy came from the military and it came from Vietnam. So it's interesting how these slang words wind up becoming terms that are used in culture and society and culture, right? And that term homeboy, it's the way they used it in the military in Vietnam is especially the so-called black and brown people, right? But all people, because there is no such thing as race. And that's the big deception that I'm going to talk about too in this episode, is how race is just a social construct that was created to create division. And Satan is a master of deception. And one of his greatest deceptions is making the world believe that there is such thing as race, especially when it comes to black and brown, so-called black and brown people, because I'm using these social constructs so that it can make sense to the listener, because I hope and pray that one day we don't have to use these terms anymore, that we can just see each other as we truly are, which is the spiritual beings having a physical experience through the grace of the Most High. And I pray that one day we can go back, and I believe we will, that we will go back to the understanding that we are all children of the Most High, having an experience in this realm called Earth. Now, with that being said, the term homeboy was used as a way of identifying your brothers that was in Vietnam that came from the same hood or the same state. So, for example, if you were somebody that was from New York and you met another soldier that was from New York, you would be like, that's my homeboy because he's from your hometown. So if you were from Texas, same thing. I was your homeboy. All the Texans called each other homeboys. And that term wound up becoming popularized well into the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and even present day. I noticed that the term home girl is used a lot, and that can be, defined in different ways now in modern culture. But I figure I'd give you that to start out this broadcast. Now, let's talk about this woke movement. So I decided to look up some information in regards to this. Now, I'm going to tell you how it all started with this, by this novelist by the name of William Melvin Kelly. Now, the Oxford Dictionary traces the earliest usage of this back into 1962 in the New York Times Magazine article titled, "If You're Woke, You Dig It." And this was coming at a time, and it says by African-American novelist William Melvin Kelly, describing the appropriation of black slang by white beatniks. I thought that was very interesting. But so much happened during the 60s. There was an awakening that was happening in the 60s of people understanding the propaganda. And of course, there was a lot of people placed to manipulate that movement of awareness. And it hasn't stopped. It just has a different face. That's why I say same crap, different toilet. And that's all we're dealing with right now. It's the same crap, a different toilet. But when it comes to this wokeness, the reason why I say it's putting people to sleep, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, look at the image. If you look at the image, when you, I'm over here stuffed up. I'm gonna have to blow my nose because this time of year the allergies start flaring up all the way up until April. But if you look at the image, when you see somebody like Nancy Pelosi, when you see that, it's like, come on now, man. I mean, the picture speaks 1,000 words, right? But they always use whatever the people are gravitating to, whatever this conscious awareness that's going on in society that is helping people to get a greater understanding of what this true experience is all about, especially when it's bringing them closer to the Most High. Because there's stages to this. There's an evolution that when you come into the Most High, that this is what goes on, is that nobody, none of the dark principalities want people to understand that the Most High is real. They don't want you to understand that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience. It's been like that for ages, and it hasn't stopped. Now, I'm going to read an article from The Conversation. And before I do that, I'm going to take a brief, very brief intermission, because what I want to do is I just want to blow my nose. And I should have did that before I started the broadcast. But why don't we do this? We'll put on one of my favorite instrumentals, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so it starts out with men of equality respect women of equality. So it says where woke came from and why marketers should think twice before jumping on the social activism bandwagon. Now, I think this is a great article. I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read some of these articles just so that I can explain this and give a better understanding for those that are listening. So it says, first used in the 1940s, the term woke has resurfaced in recent years as a concept that symbolizes awareness of social issues and movement against injustice, inequality, and prejudice. But popularity has diluted its meaning, and the idea has been cynically applied to everything from soft drinks to razors, attracting criticism if too liberally applied. One recent stretch for this term is the New Yorker magazine headline for a story about vegan chef output, which read, "What's in a woke McRib? Not a damn thing." I used to love McRibs too until I, got educated on what's in it. Being woke was originally associated with Black Americans fighting racism, but has been appropriated by other activist groups, taking it from awareness and blacklist to a colorless and timeless phenomenon. Now there are dangers associated with appearing overly concerned with consciousness raising. So, great way to explain it. But even in that, that when it was used for Black awareness, that was a manipulation as well, because that just supports more division in the social constructs and in the concept and idea that race is real. And this is what we have to be aware of, because Satan is a master deceiver, people. And all throughout season 5, we've been exposing the great deceptions of how Satan is a master deceiver. And if you haven't checked out any of the episodes from this past season or from this season so far, definitely check them out, because there's so many where we cover that, especially the ones that are specifically about Satan, like the Prince of the Power of the Air. Now, there's another one that I want to read in regards to this. And, you know, one thing that this beast system is doing now more than ever is co-opting. I mean, they co-opt everything. That's what Kanye West represents. He co-opts the truth of scriptures. And that's why you see a lot of these actors all jumping on the Hebrew Israelite gravy train. And this is what I was telling y'all people, that Hebrews and the understanding of the Hebrew culture and way of life and what it meant to be a Hebrew Israelite and a child of Israel, and how they've been scattered on all 4 corners of the planet. That's not nothing new. But because it's becoming more of a popular understanding amongst all people, not just so-called Black and brown people, but all people, it's now being co-opted by celebrities, athletes, and pretty much all the people that serve Satan. So what do? They co-opt. So it says, a history of wokeness. And this is an article from Vox. It says, staying woke, how a Black activist watchword got co-opted in culture war. Facts. It says, before 2014, the call to stay woke was for many people unheard of. Absolutely, right? Just all of a sudden, a word that came out in the 1960s from the New York Times, all of a sudden became super popular around what time? When Black Lives Matter started coming up into the mix. And you see, something you have to understand, whenever they put these psyop, distraction, propaganda campaigns, they're going to use it all. They're going to use everything in their toolbox. And this is just one of many things that was used to co-opt the truth. And the reality is this, is that when you see these things happening, we have to not go to sleep by endorsing. Because once you start endorsing this and you start thinking this is real and you start promoting it in your life, in your conversations, you have been fooled. You have now gone into sleep paralysis. You've been dumbed down and put to sleep. It's like taking an Ambien pill and getting knocked the hell out and not even remembering any of your dreams. And this is what they're doing present day, and they've been doing it for a long time. And this is why I do what I do, because it's very important that we become aware of these things, because awareness is everything. And a lot of people equate being woke to being aware. And I can tell you that is so far from the truth. But it says before 2014, this was unheard of by people. The idea behind it was common within Black communities at the point. The notion that staying woke and alert to the deceptions of other people was a basic survival tactic. But in 2014, following the police killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, stay woke suddenly became the cautionary watchword of Black Lives Matter activists on the streets, used in a chilling and specific context, keeping watch for police brutality and unjust police tactics. Just in that statement alone, you can understand the manipulation behind it. Then it says, in the 6 years since Brown's death, woke, and let's just keep it real for those that may not know, Michael Brown's death was an Illuminati Masonic hit by the Masonic orders. Okay. And his parents were very well aware of this sacrifice to move them up in the order, and also the sacrifice to move along an agenda for deception. It says, this framing of woke is bipartisan. It's bipartisan. Okay. It's used as a shorthand for political progressiveness by the left and as a denigration of the leftist culture by the right. That's one of the most accurate sentences that I've read in my research. And I'm going to read it again. So in case, and you guys could read this if you type in wokeness, the history of wokeness by Vox. Okay. I'm going to read that one more time because that's so accurate. This framing of woke is bipartisan. It's used as a shorthand for political progressiveness by the left and as a denigration of leftist culture by the right. So on one side, the so-called Democrats are using it to gain favor by people who are not just Democratic, but the people who have experienced severe injustice, which is usually in this country, Black and brown people. But those that are very aware know that injustices are handed out to people from all different cultures, whether you're white, Black, yellow, brown, red, or whatever damn other social construct nonsense color that's been given to spiritual beings having a physical experience. And they do it pretty well. And they've been doing it over and over again. It's one of the reasons that Biden was even accepted in the beginning as a president that can possibly bring about change, especially amongst Black and brown people. And it's the same way that Trump has been getting support by the right, which is represented by the Republicans, to make it seem like this is just another way of people saying, you're racist. You're playing the race card. It's all manipulation, all of it. So let's continue. It says, on the left, to be woke means to identify as a staunch social justice advocate. And that's how it gets played down by the right, by people who are considering themselves to be Republican, because I see it all the time. I saw it in an interview I saw it in a discussion that they were having on, I think his name is David Bett, and he has a pretty good podcast called Valuetainment. But the way they were talking about woke, the way they talk about it, they talk it down and they dismiss it like it's something, that's just ridiculous and absurd, which in actuality it is. But the way that they are feeding into it is exactly the manipulation behind it. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant for people on the right to look at it a certain way and people on the left to look at it another way. But it's all same crap. It's the same deception. It ain't no different. It's meant to keep you deaf, dumb, and blind from the truth. Plain and simple. And let's continue with the article because I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's very important that we cover this. And like I said, it's so much to cover in this. So I'll probably do a second and third episode on this because I won't be able to cover everything in this episode. But it says, on the left, to be woke means to identify as a staunch social justice advocate who's abreast of contemporary political concerns, or to be perceived that way, whether or not you ever claim to be woke yourself. Facts. At times, the defensiveness surrounding wokeness invites ironic blowback. Consider the 2020 Hulu comedy series Woke. And that's another thing, is that whenever a social construct or a form of manipulation to basically guide cultural awareness or guide a culture into a certain misleading understanding, they'll do everything. They'll make a movie about it. They'll make shows about it. They put it in commercials. They'll put it in songs. And the deception gravy train just keeps chewing away and leading people astray from the Most High. Now it says at times, consider the 2020 Hulu comedy series Woke, which attempted to deconstruct the identity politics behind ideas like wokeness, only to garner criticism for having an outdated and too centrist political viewpoint. That is, for not being woke enough. And this is why the rabbit hole goes so deep in deception, people. I mean, that statement right there says a lot as well. But let's continue. On the right, woke, like its cousin canceled, bespeaks political correctness gone awry. I'm going to read that again because that's a powerful statement. On the right, woke, like the cousin canceled, bespeaks political correctness gone awry, and the term itself is usually used sarcastically. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a second because we're going to go back to that article, but I want to touch on a couple of things in regards to that statement. And give me a second, folks, because the allergies I got to sneeze again. Ooh, boy. Sometimes I wake up with these allergies, but let's stick to the topic at hand. So with that statement right there, one thing I want to say, all of this is connected, right? Just like the satanic web around the world. It's all connected. Everybody has responsibilities and everybody has a job to do to keep leading us astray from the Most High, keep leading us astray from truth. And the truth is that we are one under the grace of the Most High. And that's really what the Most High always wanted for us in the beginning. We're the ones that messed it up, especially the children of Israel, because the children of Israel were supposed to be the messengers of truth for the rest of the world. Because a lot of the rest of the world was not operating in a manner that was righteous. They were operating in a manner that was disrespectful. And then, of course, Israel started operating like that pretty quickly. It didn't take too long. And that's been the battle ever since, right? But in actuality, when it comes to this to this deception of wokeness, it always leads to other things. It's always a catalyst to other things. So it's like a doorway that opens up, but once it completely opens, or once you open the gates, it's just like the propaganda just now is allowed to be flooding in at a very fast rate. And one of the things that this wokeness movement was able to contribute to is the gender manipulation, the whole entire alphabet gang manipulation. And for those that don't know what I mean by the alphabet gang, I'm talking about the LB, blee, 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 blee. And the only reason I say it that way is because of the cancel culture through the virtual government being your Googles, your YouTubes, and just pretty much the, big tech, Silicon Valley companies that have become our virtual government. They govern what we say. That's why freedom of speech ain't so free anymore. Our speech is not free. Because even when we're saying what we want to say, like what I'm doing right now, right? I'm pretty much saying whatever I want to say on this broadcast, but there's things happening behind the scenes to make sure that I am being regulated to not say anything that is truthful, to the point where if I say it exactly how it should be said, there's going to be repercussions and consequences to that. It's just the world we live in right now. That's why we got to play chess. That's why we got to be very strategic with the enemy, because the enemy is working 24/7 to deceive us. So we got to work 24/7 to combat them, to basically bring this truth out and stay true to the Most High. So going back to what I was saying about this woke movement, really, really solidified acceptance in this culture of abomination. And it really helped to glorify the abominations, just like I did with the show with Brother Kakun from the BOCC, who we talked about this glorification of abominations. And the woke movement, you want to talk about a major, major contributor to that? That's what this new woke movement did, of social injustice. Because when you look at Black Lives Matter was a big propaganda campaign that's still going strong, and it's generated millions upon millions of dollars in revenue. All because people are emotionally triggered by certain things, and they know this. They've been doing it for ages. You know who does that well too? Pastors in these churches that preach their prosperity doctrine. They always go off your emotions, people. And if there's one thing that I can impress upon you, for you to start doing this year, to be more aware of who you are as the spiritual being having a physical experience. Don't get too caught up in your emotions, because the enemy knows that. The enemy knows that if they can get you emotional, that they can pretty much get you to do whatever they want you to do. And you will be under emotional hypnosis. And that's what a lot of us struggle with, is that a lot of us are under emotional hypnosis, and we need to get out of that state of mind. And give me a second, because I'm going to write that down, because I think that's a topic that we need to focus on. And that's, what I was telling you, people, when you come up with these things, that's just the Most High feeding you. So I'm gonna write that down, emotional hypnosis, because we're gonna do a show on that. It's very important that I do not forget that, hypnosis. But going back to the woke movement, that's what it did. Black Lives Matter really glorified people that were in that alphabet gang. And then that alphabet gang really glorified the synthetic people movement. And when I mean by synthetic people, I'm talking about the tears, the ones that claim to be something that they're truly not. But because they take a bunch of drugs and configure their hormones and all other types of stuff, all of a sudden we have to accept it as real. But it's through these types of movements that they're able to work your emotions and put your emotions into a hypnosis state and completely guide you to destruction, to self-destruction. And it's been working out pretty freaking well for the enemy to do that to our people, period. Okay? That's exactly what's happening here. And it hasn't stopped. So keep that in mind, that this spiritual warfare, is vast. It's strong. And you have to make a decision. It's like either you're going to be in this truth, because the truth requires a lot of self-evaluation. The truth requires you not to get so damn emotional about things, because that's what a lot of people use to manipulate. I mean, there's people doing it all over the place. There's people doing it on all different platforms. You've heard me talk about a platform that I used to listen to heavily, where the man on that platform does it very well. He's a master manipulator, and he works off of people's emotions, and he pretty much puts them in a hypnosis state and gets them to do whatever they want to do, or whatever he wants them to do and believe in. And they can create narratives just like the enemy does. Create a narrative, make you believe that that narrative is real without even questioning it, no matter how absurd the narrative may be. And this is why it's so important to really allow the spirit, listen to that voice from the Most High that's within you. Let the light shine and don't dim it by questioning it. Listen to that intuition, because a lot of times we have these checks and balances within our spirit, to where when we start getting emotional, the Most High will reveal to us like, hey, you're out of order. But what do? We continue on with fueling and giving energy to that emotion. And then what winds up happening is we wind up becoming a wreck. We wind up becoming very confused. It's no different than when we become emotionally invested in a narcissist, right? Because that's what a narcissist does. We live in a very narcissistic society. So what the narcissist is going to do is they're going to get you to believe that they care about you, and they're going to cater to your emotional state of being. And they're going to make you emotionally drunk and elated with emotional joy and what you think is great satisfaction, that, they understand me, they love me, and then it just all comes crashing down. And that's exactly how the enemy operates in modern day society. Is that they put you under emotional hypnosis, and then you wind up thinking that you're involved in something righteous, that you're involved in something good, only to be led astray. Okay? So let's continue. That's something I wanted to mention, because this abomination movement has really been triggered by the woke movement heavily. It's really been supported by it. It's been given it's been given an identity. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that look at the people that are leading the Black Lives Matter movement, right? One of the founding members is a lesbian. And most of the people, this is how I was just like, wow, man, this is pure insanity. But have you noticed or have noticed that when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement, it was mostly people of European American descent, meaning so-called white people, that was in the forefront of a Black Lives Matter movement? It's like, what? But people go along with it because they're under emotional hypnosis. Also, keep in mind, and I don't know the statistical facts behind this, so I'm just going to give my assumption to this, right? Because I don't really even care to know the statistics. But just based on what I've seen throughout the years since this Black Lives Matter movement started, was that most of the people that was in these rallies and protests were mostly people from the Alphabet Gang. It was people that was either, gay, lesbian, or some other form of gender identity. It's just a fact. You didn't see a lot of heterosexual. Not saying that they wasn't, because they all, there's a good portion of people that identify as heterosexual. I can't even believe I just said that, people. Please forgive me. I can't believe that people, I just said, see, but that's the conditioning. So I have to be aware even sometimes when I speak, because we don't need to identify as heterosexual. We just are. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just are what we were created to be. But just to bring things into the proper context is that most of the people that supported this movement was from those types of groups. And they generated a lot of money. A lot of that money, and let's just also state this fact, that movement of Black Lives Matter, who was it funded by? It was funded by one of the Zionist oligarchs by the name of George Soros, okay? And whenever you see Hillary Clinton, supporting something, it's wicked, right? So let's continue with this article because I think it's pretty good. So it says, on the right, woke like the cousin canceled, bespeaks political correctness gone awry. And the term itself usually used sarcastically. See, I like that because it is. It's very much used sarcastically in a very condescending manner as well. At the Republican National Convention in August, right-wing Republican Matt Gaetz scolded woke-topians. Oh, I just love it. Okay. He scolded woke-topians, grouping them together with socialist and Biden supporters as though the definition of woke-topian was self-evident. But as use of the word spreads, what people actually mean by woke seems less clear than ever. Bam. Boom, pow, boom. There you go. Because in actuality, that's what they do. They always making things very unclear. They're always blurring the lines because they have to keep us divided. They have to keep this propaganda of racism and race real. They have to. And all racism really is a form of evil. Because when somebody else doesn't like or hates on somebody because the melanin or the complexion within their skin tone, that's evil, people. Just like with the word narcissism, it's just another word for evil. And evil has existed since the beginning of civilization, since the beginning of man, of humankind. Okay? It's nothing new under the sun. They just give it these different words, and then by giving it a different word, it puts you into emotional hypnosis, because then you start classifying things in a certain way, and it leads you further and further away from the truth, which is the Most High, which is Yah, Christ, the Messiah. Okay, the Messiah is the truth. That's why I'm getting so rooted in scriptures now more than ever in my older years. And I've been doing it for the past 5 years, where I've been getting deeply rooted into scriptures and more. And that's why the Most High has brought certain people into my life to help me get rooted in this truth so that I can be a better messenger. The Most High makes no mistakes, people. None whatsoever. And if you're in a position, don't question when you don't associate with certain energies no more. That's the Most High looking out for you. The Most High, when your heart is pure, when you have those real intentions on serving, the Most High is going to accommodate. Best believe it. And sometimes it's just that accommodation is not always going to be pleasant. And that's when you have to get out of your emotions, because sometimes you got to go through major strife and struggle in order to get to where you need to be and where the Most High needs you to be in order to serve, in order to really be fulfilled with that righteous light that the Most High represents and that the Most High is. And I think a lot of us battle with that. I'm grateful that I didn't battle with that when that happened to me, because sometimes when you get caught up in that emotional hypnosis and you get caught up in your emotions, it could lead you astray. It could lead you down some dark paths, and it could have happened to me. But I wasn't going to allow that to happen. I was going to allow for the messages that were being given to be understood and not get emotionally invested in it, and just understand that this is how it has to happen. Don't question the Most High. Just go. Just go with what the Most High is leading you with. Get out of your own way and allow Yahweh. Get out your own way and allow Christ to guide you. Let that Christ consciousness be your guiding light instead of you trying to be the light guiding the Most High. Because I think a lot of us do that. And once we stop doing that, oh man, it's such a beautiful awakening. Then the awareness is on a whole nother level. And that's when you really start networking. So let's continue with this article. It says, but the use of the word spreads. What people actually mean by woke seems less clear than ever. After all, none of the recent political concepts has anything to do with the idea of demanding that people stay woke against police brutality. Despite renewed activism against police brutality in 2020, the way the terms like woke and wokeness are used outside of the Black Lives Matter community seems to bear little connection to their original context on either the right or left. Now, I find it interesting that they put a quote in here from Christ. It says, Jesus said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven. Not everyone who says woke is actually committed to racial justice." Now, that's a whole, and it's funny how they put that in there, because there is a book that I need to read, and it's what's it called here? Because they do this very well. They like to use the Most High to manipulate people. They like to use the word. I shouldn't say the Most High. Please forgive me. They like to use the word for manipulation, right? They've been doing it for eons. But there's a book that I'm going to have to check out. It's a national bestseller. It says Christianity and Wokeness, How Social Justice Movement is Hijacking the Gospel and the Way to Stop It. And it's very true. They've hijacked the word to manipulate certain agendas. And it hasn't changed, because that's That's what they do, people. And that's how they was able to, like I was explaining just previously, is that they use these movements to push the satanic agenda, people. They use this to really glorify this beast system that wants to control every aspect of your life. And the only way they get to control you is through your thoughts. Because the more they get you to believe in the lie, the more the lie becomes real and becomes truth to you. And just like in Isaiah, okay, where they've accepted the light for the darkness and the darkness for the light, this ain't nothing new under the sun. This is just another modern way of how the Most High or the Most High's people have been led astray from the truth, from that everlasting light. The way they've been strayed away from living a life and walking the path of the Messiah and walking in that light. And that's why we got to stay diligent to this, because this ain't going to stop. And the only way you get to stop it is by sticking to what is true, which is the Most High, which is Christ, which is that truth that's everlasting, that light, instead of engaging in all this other confusion that only creates division, and keeps you limited as the spiritual being having that physical experience. And you don't really get to have the true experience of being the spiritual being because you're caught up in this emotional hypnosis. Now, it goes on to say that shifting Black Lives Matter slogan away from the original meaning is arguably the least woke thing ever. Yet, that seems to be just what happened with all things woke itself. To understand how woke came to stand in for an entire political ideology, it's helpful to trace how the term traveled so far and wide within American mainstream and what that journey reveals about popularized society. Bam. Stay woke began as a watchword for Black Americans. The first time many people heard woke in its correct context was likely during the birth of Black Lives Matter movement. Now, there is no correct context for woke because woke was always used to identify something that is a lie. Okay? Racism is not real. The hatred within man is real. The wickedness within these dark principalities is real because that's what's guiding all of this. This is spiritual warfare, people. We have to stop making this a physical thing. Because once you start making it physical and not realizing that there are forces working behind the scenes, forces working right around us that we can't see, the better off you'll be once you understand that. Because when you start making things physical and you start believing things like race and all these other social constructs, like I'm even going to do an episode where I'm going to really blow people's mind when I explain to you that the word Negro doesn't apply to just so-called Black people. That the word Negro is a social construct that was used to identify people that were considered less than. And it just wasn't so-called Black people in America. All right. The word Negro was utilized for all different cultural backgrounds, even in Europe. Okay. And we're going to talk about that for another day. But it's time that we wake up spiritually because we in the days of revelations, people, and either you're going to get it or you're going to be swept away in that emotional hypnosis and get stuck and be led astray. Like many of our brothers and sisters are doing. Like they're being led astray, and they're allowing themselves to be led astray because they're heavily emotionally invested in nonsense, in a lie that always is always going to mislead you and lead you astray from the Most High. The lie that leads you astray from the Most High. I'll say it again. The lies that lead you astray from the Most High. Now, it goes on to say that the first time many people heard woke in this current context, like during the birth of Black Lives Matter movement in 2014, Black citizens took the streets nightly to protest the police shooting death of Michael Brown. As they did so, urge each other to stay woke against police actions and other threats. But woke and the phrase stay woke had already been a part of Black communities for years, long before Black Lives Matter gained prominence. While renewed national outcry over anti-Black police violence certainly fueled widespread and mainstream usage of the word in the present, and has much longer history, DeAndre Miles Hercules, a doctoral linguistics researcher at the University of California, Santa Barbara, told me the earlier known examples of wokeness as a concept revolve around the idea of Black consciousness waking up to a reality or activist framework and dates back to the early 20th century. In 1923, a collection of aphorisms and ideas by the Jamaican philosopher and social activist Marcus Garvey included the summons, wake up Ethiopia, wake up Africa, as a call to global Black citizens to become more socially and politically conscious. A few years later, the phrase stay woke turned up as part of a spoken afterword in the 1938 song Scottsboro Boys, a protest song by blues musician Huddie Ledbetter, a.k.a. Leadbelly. The song describes the 1931 saga of a group of 9 Black teenagers in Scottsboro, Arkansas, who were accused of raping 2 white women. Leadbelly said at the end of the archival recording of the song that he met with the Scottsboro defendants' lawyers who introduced him to the men themselves. I made this little song about down there, Leadbelly says. So I advised everybody, be a little careful when they go along through there. Best stay woke, keep their eyes open. Woo! Telling you people, the level of deception goes so deep, and the way that the enemy uses these things to keep us divided is so sophisticated. It's so advanced. And that's why we got to stay rooted spiritually in the truth, because the truth is the only thing that's going to set you free, people. Because as long as we keep being emotionally invested as seeing ourselves different from each other, it will stay that way. Okay, it will stay that way. And these movements and these propaganda agendas and campaigns will always be given life because we give it attention through our emotions. When we become emotionally invested in something, we are giving it life. We are feeding it. We are giving it those provisions that it doesn't deserve, and we don't need to give it to. We need to give all our investment into the Most High. Because once we do that, everything starts to become better. Everything starts to become unified. There's more peace of mind collectively and individually. And that's why they need to keep us thinking that we are different, that there's such thing as race, that there's such thing as a Black person, there's such thing as a white person, there's such thing as a Black person. Or a yellow person, right? Who's considered to be yellow people? Asians. Who's considered to be red people? They used to call red people the native, the so-called Native Americans, which we know those are not red people and those are not Native or Americans. All right. But you're always going to have people that are emotionally unstable and that are emotionally invested in everything. And that's what a lot of society has become, is emotionally invested in everything. Logic is, and just plain simple common sense is not common no more. And that's why the statistics back in 2017, I don't even know where they're at now, but damn, there was at least over 93% of Americans in 2017 that was suffering from some form of depression. Why? Because everybody is under emotional hypnosis. And the enemy wants you to be depressed. The enemy wants you to be hopeless. The enemy doesn't want you to have an unwavering faith, because faith is a superpower that can overcome many things through the grace of the Most High. And walking in the light of Christ, walking in the light of Yah, it'll do wonders for you if you're truly walking in the light. If you're truly walking in that conscious state of being while in these physical bodies, spiritually. I'm going to read a couple of more things here. And then, of course, I'm going to end the broadcast because I don't want to go too long on this episode. I want to leave you with something, but not too much to where it's too much in one sitting, right? Or in one episode. So we're going to talk more about this throughout season 5, because there's so much to discuss these days. But I hope this is making sense. And I really hope that this brings great substance to you, because we really need to get out of that emotional hypnosis and really start getting more in tune, more invested in the truth, which is the Most High. That's it. And really start listening to the spirit instead of listening to the ego, because the ego is the nucleus where all the emotions, where the emotional instability comes from. It's good to have emotions, but it's better to have a balance. It's better to utilize temperance when dealing with emotions, because there's a time and a place for that, and it's very limited. Emotions are not to be heavily invested in, because the reason why people are being led astray is because they've invested too much into their emotions instead of investing into the truth and into just rational, logical thought and common sense. So I'm going to continue with this, and it gets interesting, people. So I'm just going to read a little bit more here, and then we're gonna continue. It says, let me skip a couple of things here. It says the American Negro feels he can, on the spur of the movement, create the most exciting language that exists in English-speaking country today. I asked someone what they felt about people trying to us hip language. He said, man, they blew the gig just by being gray. Okay, so it says that given that the oldest known introduction of woke to the mainstream comes in 1962, opinion piece about how white Americans are always appropriating the black vernacular It's almost as though the world predicts its own fate. Kelly argued that because Black Americans know their language is constantly being appropriated, the language itself is constantly changing. By the time these terms get into mainstream, he observed, new ones have already appeared. A few Negroes guard the idiom so virulently they were consciously invent a new term as soon as they hear the existing one coming from a white's lips. And you see, and that's very true. But the overall engagement and the way they identify it is a lie from its nucleus, because you're still identifying somebody that is no different from you, taking something that you created as a people, because they're making you think that you are a color, that you are a specific group of people based on the overall, how can I explain this so that it makes sense? Based on the overall oppression. And I've talked about this a lot, is that one of the ways, especially when it comes to so-called Black and brown people that have been oppressed in this place called the United Shenanigans of America since its inception, it's easy to work off of people's emotion because they're so traumatized. But we need to heal ourselves from that trauma through the grace of the Most High, because it's through that trauma that they continue to manipulate you. It's no different than a child that's either been physically or mentally abused by a parent or family member, for that adult to continue to manipulate the child even while they're an adult based on the trauma that they experienced. And it's not until that child overcomes that trauma with therapy, with the proper healing, to realize that they can't no longer give power and allow their oppressor to trigger them and free themselves from that oppression, free themselves from the trauma that they constantly relive within their mind. And I'm just saying this, people, because I'm noticing that this propaganda gravy train, when it comes to the woke movement, has really gained momentum with this Black Lives Matter. And it just continues to perpetuate itself in the younger generations, to where the younger generations are making this into something to where it's becoming now a cultural norm. It's a cultural norm. And what's even more interesting is that now they're tying in the whole ideology and the construct that was created by the CIA, which is considered to be the conspiracy theorists, into the woke movement. So now when somebody speaks some truth, when it has to deal with government propaganda, what do they identify with? Oh, you think you woke. So I'm going to leave it there because, like I said, there's so much to cover when it comes to this, being woke. I mean, this being woke movement is absurd, if you ask me, in my opinion, but I'm just one man. I'm just one spiritual being having a physical experience. But I could tell you one thing. I am not trying to be asleep. I'm not trying to be in sleep paralysis. I'm not trying to be under emotional hypnosis. Okay? I just want to have an understanding of what is true. And the only thing that is true, and it always has been true, is the truth that the Most High, and through Christ and through that way of being and understanding through the word, is the only truth. It's the only way. And it's the only way we're going to come together as as spiritual beings having a physical experience in one realm. Okay? We all have to breathe the same air. We all drink the same water. And we all need food and nutrients in order to stay alive. And we all have melanin in our skin. So how can there ever be division when we're all the same and one? And with that being said, brothers and sisters, I'm going to end this broadcast. And there's new music coming out very soon. New music coming out. But I'm going to end off this broadcast with one song. It's one of my favorite songs. It's a song by Brother Aim, and it's featuring Take One on it. And it's called Higher Learning. Okay? So with that being said, brothers and sisters, before I play that song, I just want to say this. When you live in the present, there's always an opportunity for a new beginning. Don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up the tunnel and find your way through the darkness. And all praises to the Messiah, all praises to the Most High, and peace, love, and light. Barakadan Shalom, brothers and sisters.
Trapped in a world, but they don't want how you learn. No. They want everybody the same. They don't want to see that proper growth and development. Expanding my brain so I can learn what I can. All because of how you learning. Learning knowledge that I never thought I would. You get me, yeah, cause of how you learning. They don't want nobody having that knowledge. Waking up in a different light, got my mind right. It took me time and time just to put it together. You know you not learning nothing when you second guessing, because it all lies. They put us in school for 12 years plus. Got the nerve to give us a paper certificate. I've been watching quite some time. Finally, that I see what's going on. Every time that I lay down, yeah, I feel, yeah, sad.
I'll start off my morning run about 6 o'clock. Not like I got a choice. It's just it's rough.
Trapped in a world, but they don't want how you learn. No. They want everybody the same. They don't want to see that proper growth and development. Expanding my brain so I can learn what I can. All because of how you learning. Learning knowledge that I never thought I would. You get me, yeah, cause of how you learning.
Remember 6 a.m. waking up to get to class. Now it be 5 a.m. I'm rising up to hit them laps. School never taught me to be this disciplined with myself. All praise to Yahweh, been Yahweh helping me with my health. The spirit keeps me up even though we all packed in the jungle. Police be lying, they want you mentally trapped in a bubble. You see them smile on TV, always acting like they love you. Don't wanna see you rise up, they wanna see you ash and rough. I keep my acts in humbleness in hopes that the Lord will favor me even more, cause he's the one that has my number. He's been my guide, he's made me wise. He's all I know until the end, I'm gonna grind. Looking up to the sky, trying to stay righteous with the storm on my side. The crown of life is my why. I'm asking Father, please help guide me to the light.
Trapped in a world, but they don't want how you learn. No. They want everybody the same. They don't in development. Expanding my brain so I can